and welcome to another episode of the IAMKAYPEE Podcast, and I am joined today by the man with the golden voice, Daniele Bolelli. Thank you for joining me.
Just because I can pronounce English right, but that's...
No, man, when I listen to your podcast, your voice is very soothing. You must get that a lot.
Yeah. I joke about it. I always say that it's, you actually used to speak perfect English, but people told me that women like an Italian accent. But the reality is that no, I have a horrible ear for correcting myself. Like sometimes saying I'm not, so I'm just like, after a while, I kind of give up on it.
That's good. Yeah, and you're in LA, are you? Yes.
Yeah.
I take it it's very sunny at this point.
Right now it's insanely hot.
That's crazy for me because I'm Scottish, and
Right.
our weather is very terrible all the time. But we have had a great summer this year, which is completely out of the blue.
That's sweet. That's nice. Yeah, here is still full 30 plus Celsius kind of thing. And
that would kill me.
the thing that's fun is that, like anything, when you get used to it, then you don't like it that much anymore.
Yeah.
Like, oh, great, another sunny, hot day, whatever. Just give me, like my daughter, anytime it rains, she's so happy. She's like, ridiculously happy. She's like jumping around and she's super, because it doesn't rain much. So when it does, it's amazing.
I think the first question I wanted to ask was how do you go from being born in Italy to lecturing in the US? You know, how does that come about?
Sure. I moved, so I grew up in Italy. I stayed there till I was 18. And then I moved, so I was 1992 when I turned 18 and I moved to the United States. Originally it was just because I like living in Italy as far as, if you're retired, it's an awesome place to be.
Yeah.
To get stuff done, not so much. It's really slow, kind of bureaucratic, fairly hostile to new ideas. So I was not all that excited at what I was seeing possibility-wise around me. And US, I had no idea. And all I know is just the movies and Hollywood, that kind of stuff. So I was like, in some ways, the center of the world in the sense that, the stuff that's produced within a few miles of where I'm at gets to be seen all over the world.
Yeah.
So I was interested in what is it like? And there are advantages and disadvantages. There's some stuff about it that's really cool, other things that really are not. But, I think that goes with everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of stuck around. I started initially I wasn't doing so well in US. I didn't like it so much. I stuck around. I got more used to it.
Was it a big culture shock for you?
A little bit, because granted, I come from a Western capitalist country, but not as much.
Yeah.
This is way more, like it's very, very, very focused on the individual. There's really not much community. I have no idea how people meet each other out here, because everybody's just work, go from place to place. Yeah. Nobody has time. So
and I guess it was pre sort of social media. There was no way of just rocking up and meeting someone without actually physically having to go and see them.
Yep. Big time. So it's, it's different for sure. It's, I enjoyed I started teaching because I realized, okay, this is fun enough and I can do it part-time and it'll leave me some time and I get to talk about things I enjoy and, so it seemed like I never planned on teaching before, but after a while I was like, okay, this could work. Yeah. This could make sense.
Did you always know you were going to study and do something with academia, or did you have other hopes when you went to the US?
Yeah, I didn't like academia. I never cared for it. I mean, even now I don't. I just like when I'm in class because I can do what I want with it and, we have fun. But generally speaking, the culture of academia, I'm not that intrigued with it.
Yeah.
No, it was just a way to kind of cover my butt while I'm trying to write or do podcast or do something else. At least you have a regular job that pays the bills, at least keep the bare minimum on. And then it leaves you time to try other things, to to venture out in directions that maybe are more in line with your passions and stuff.
And did you start off studying, is it philosophy and Native American studies? Was
Yes, I studied a bunch of things. My first degree was in anthropology, but I didn't really like it all that much. So I switched. I started doing stuff focused more on American Indian cultures, and that was fun enough. And then I realized, if I'm going to teach, I need something that's a little more broad.
Yeah.
I need it to be a bit broader than that. So I did a degree in history, and that was helpful because then I could teach a whole bunch of classes.
Yeah. What drew you to Native American studies?
I don't know. It's always been, I guess it's kind of odd because, it's like, why? But to me, it was always like, oh, of course, why not? It was always something that I was interested in since I was a kid. It was always something that I guess I must have been exposed in some way. I don't even know how.
Could it be the sort of cowboys and Indians type movies that we see growing up?
Could totally be. Not like it goes so far back that I don't even remember when it started.
Yeah. And it is kind of a strange one. I think it's maybe the opposite from where you are in Italy to see these things on TV and a culture that is kind of opposite to you in a way, I guess.
Sure, for sure. I mean, it's like, and that for sure is like in general for me, I've always been fascinated with different cultures, with stuff that is beyond what I'm used to. Like now I appreciate a lot of European history and culture a lot more than I did growing up.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, I was more interested in, that's great and all, but I see this stuff every day. I want to see what else is out there.
Yeah. Is coming from Italy, is that something that you learned about a lot in school? Was the Roman Empire, was that just part of the curriculum, or was it not really covered?
Yeah, they murder you with that stuff. And over and over and over and over again.
You probably had a master's degree before you even came to America in Roman history.
It's one of the six that, Roman history are like, not again. We have done it in elementary, in junior high, in high school, all the time.
But you did choose to study it again, is that correct?
Which one?
The Roman history.
I mean, that's another funny thing. Is like Roman history, for example. I was always exposed to it, and because of that, I really didn't care growing up.
Yeah.
I was just like, not this stuff again.
But that is sorry, continue. Sorry.
No, and the time when I actually got into it was when, remember a few years back, HBO did this series called Rome.
Yep. Great TV show, by the way.
Amazing. And after that, I was like, oh, now I get the appeal. It
wasn't
then Roman history was a lot more interesting to me than it was before.
It wasn't all the sex and all that type of stuff, was it?
Very juicy and that was good.
And that is for someone who grew up with it, you would be sort of jaded by it, I guess, and to go to it later or even talk about it in your podcast, which you have done, haven't you? It must be something that's quite familiar to you.
Yeah, but now I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Now I see why it's fun. For the longest time, I didn't. And so in some way, same thing. Like, for example, when I started working on like the story of Caravaggio, the Italian painter, it took me reading books in English, seeing from outsider's perspective, to really let me get into Caravaggio and even the vibe of that times, the 1500s in Italy, late 1500s, early 1600s. It started looking way more interesting than the way I'd ever studied it in school. And suddenly it was like, oh, I can get into this. I see the appeal of this stuff.
And why do you think you came to that conclusion later on in life? Do you think maybe there was just more access to information, or did you just were looking at it in a new light?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is a different way of looking at it. I could see there was more humanity in the view I got from other sources than I did. A lot of growing up, it's a lot of sort of memorization, and it's a bit tedious and it's not as interesting. So when you start getting stories, you can see events through somebody's eyes, and that makes it much, much more interesting.
And that's something that comes across in your podcast. You do try to to bring the story from the people's eyes, you know, and that is something that comes across so well, and that's what makes your podcast so great, I think.
Yes, sometimes some topics are great topics, but if I don't have humans to filter those topics, it's used. I can't touch them. You know, they may be interesting topics, but if I don't have some lead characters there, somebody that people can relate to, then I got nothing.
Yeah, and you're doing a podcast about history, but you're also telling a story, and that has to be juicy, like you're saying, these stories. So you've been recently doing some studying with Joan of Arc, is that correct? Like you've been sort of prepping for a new podcast?
Yeah, I've been at it for months now. I'm like, no more. I don't want to. No, but yeah, I'm going to do. Yeah, it's sometime I never know how long it's going to be a series. So I started out, and there were a lot of books. So I figure, okay, it's going to be 2 parts. It's not going to be a single episode. And then I realized there's no way. There's too much stuff, and I spend too much stuff working on it. So I need to make 3 episodes out of it.
Yeah.
And by now that I'm about to, you know, I just recorded the first, I need to release it in a couple of weeks. I'm like, yeah, it's 4 episodes. You know, it's just, I mean, I spent 4 to 5 months working on it. I cannot spend more time than how many I release. You know, it's like, and the fact is, I did get so much information, so much material that I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to break it up a little.
Yeah. What is the process when it comes to your episodes? Do you just have a general sources that you take from, or do you really dig for the information and try and get a new take maybe on the subject you're doing? How does it all work?
Yeah, I mean, you pick, once you realize that there's some potential in a subject, that it looks like a good topic, then I'll start picking the key books on the topic, the key sources about it. Maybe start with the first one, the one that looks the most comprehensive, use that first so that I can create a general outline of the story. And then as I read more books, if the information is the same, great, okay, it's the same. If I can add the things, then I have a place where to add them already. So I don't have to take notes on 15 books and then try to mix them all together because it would take forever. I add whatever notes I get on top of an existing structure. And then, you know, I start making a few notes to myself of places where the story can get, you know, if I see something that can lead to something funny or some reference that could be cool, you know, I find ways to make it a little more narrative.
Yeah. God knows how you have time to do anything else. It seems like a full-time job just to try and create the episodes for your show.
I mean, I am up to pretty much 1 a.m. every night.
That's the witching hour for people who are creating, I guess.
Yeah, it's like I mean, it's weird because on one end, I am obviously doing too much.
Yeah.
But it's all stuff I enjoy, so it's not bad. It's just that my work days are like 14-hour days, you know, it's that kind of thing. So it's a lot.
My girlfriend, she's an artist, and one of the things I admire about artists is when to know when to stop with a piece of work, and that must translate to all forms of creating something. Like, how do you know when something is finished in terms of an episode?
Yeah, because I mean, you could spend forever studying a topic, and eventually there's a point where you're like, okay, I've read already 10 books on it, we're done. No, there's no need to. Yeah, we could always dig a little deeper, but come on, there's enough of a great story here that we're good.
Yeah.
You know, I check and cross-check every other thing. At this point, just become a perversion to just keep digging for the sake of digging, because realistically, you're going to spend way more hours to get a lot less after, you know, initially you spend time and you get a lot.
Yeah.
The more time you spend, the less you get out of it, until eventually it becomes like, yeah, you keep increasing that knowledge, but it's by tiny bits.
Yeah.
It's not.
You're cutting the fat off your work. You know, you're chipping away.
Yeah.
Like you know, Michelangelo, you're chipping away. Is there anything that that you find as you dig deeper and you come across misconceptions about parts of history? Is there anything that springs to mind that people think is one way, and then when you're digging a bit deeper, you realize it's not quite what people generally assume about certain parts of history?
Well, a lot of the times is a lot messier than you think. A lot of the time, and I think that's what makes it fun is when you dig into specifics. Once you start digging into specific story, then you can dive deeper and you have more information to dig in, and the picture gets much more three-dimensional rather than having kind of these flat characters or these simple stories of good guys, bad guys. It often gets a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
And there are layers to each story. You know, there's the thing, if you tell me this story in 20 seconds, okay, we can tell it in 20 seconds, but of course we're going to cut it a bit, we'll oversimplify inevitably. And, you know, in 20 minutes, okay, we can go a little deeper.
Yeah.
In 2 hours, there are going to be way more layers and more nuance to it all.
Mm-hmm. And with how are you finding your prep for Joan of Arc? Is there anything that has surprised you from your studies? Obviously, you don't want to give anything away, but...
No, but the main thing is the story really make no sense. You know, it's one of the stories that I'm like, we know what happens.
Yeah.
We know the people involved. We know a lot. You know, there's so much information on her story. And yet it doesn't make any sense because it's like, how does an illiterate female teenage peasant in 1400s France go say, I hear voices telling me that I'm going to lead the army to lift the siege and have the king crowned. I mean, you can say it, but you're, you know, the crazy girl in the village, except she actually pulls it off. And there's really no logical path for that to happen. There's none.
Is there no reason why? Did they not tell you why she was allowed to just say these things?
No, I mean, it's one of the things that, A, we don't know what was going on with her because she doesn't really neatly fit any modern diagnosis for anything. The stuff that does happen, it's like, why did such and such person believe her? Why did he work exactly with the right timing? Why did, you know, everything clicks in a way that if you are to try that 52 million other times, you cannot repeat the same sequence of events, you know? So it's one of the stories that leave you scratching your head a bit because you're like, okay, that's just a weird one. There's not too many ways to neatly explain it.
Yeah. It could be our first transgendered hero, you know, where they just, it was actually a guy. So we'll let him or her get on with saying those things.
Yeah, I mean, that's weird too, because, like, for example, some of the people who served in the army with her commented how she was actually a very attractive woman.
Right, okay.
One of them, you know, some of her enemies actually had her tested as, is she really a woman? Oh, yeah, she is, okay. You know, stuff like that. So it was so weird, man. It's such a crazy story. It's
when you're deep in battle, anything can look attractive, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Once, you know, it's better than seeing people's heads sort of flying.
Yeah, PTSD does such strange things to people. And you say it's going to be a 4-part now on
so it's going to
on Joan of Arc.
September, October, December. Yeah, between here and the end of the year.
And one of the things I've always wanted to ask when I've been listening to your show and when you've been on podcasts with Joe Rogan and such like is what time period would you visit if you could? It must be a question that comes up a lot.
You know, one thing that I find fascinating is before civilizations, before, you know, hunting and gathering life 20,000 years ago. I mean, I guess which one would you visit? It depends on if you have guarantees that you make it back alive. Like, do I just be, you know, a fly on the wall? Or because, of course, you know, in one case you would pick the least possible dangerous scenarios. In another, you don't. But as far as being able to be a fly on the wall, yeah, life 20,000 years ago or 30,000 years ago or 15,000 years ago completely fascinate me.
Yeah.
It's like, did people with minimal technology survive in extremely harsh circumstances, surrounded by some tough predators? It's interesting. Yeah. It's very interesting to me.
That is definitely one of my time periods that I would love to visit. A lot of people say the Roman Empire, or even to go back 2,000 years to see if there was someone crucified on the cross.
Right.
But that one definitely appeals to me. From 15,000 BC to all the way to the 30,000, it's just an incredible time, and just to sort of it is us, you know. It's not just these cavemen that people think. It is human beings that went through that. So we must have some sort of possible genetic memory to that. You know, it's just so fascinating.
Well, I mean, even think like when people are like all human kids are scared of the dark. There's no good reason to be scared of the dark. You're in your room. There's nothing in your room. It's safe. But when you think about it, you know, for thousands and thousands of years, the dark was when predators would be around, and there are literally these monsters out there who want to eat you. And all you got is your little fire to try to keep stay and like some sharpened sticks.
Yeah.
That's how you spend the night. You know what I mean? Is like you're spending the night with this idea that, there is some giant saber-toothed tiger who's going to try to eat me if I step more than 6 steps away from the fire.
Yeah.
That would get you a little nervous. I can see why you would be scared of the dark.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to why paranoia is so widespread, maybe because that's compounded by years of people surviving who were paranoid.
Yeah, because it's like there's just about everything in your environment wants to kill you.
Well, not like today anymore. So,
right.
Another question is, who would you like to armbar from history?
Armbar. Let's see. There's so many horrible human beings. It's almost hard to pick because there's. One of the things that when you look at history is that it's very easy to run in. If you're looking for horrible stories and horrible people, they are everywhere in history.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot harder. I think there's a bit of a bias. I don't think that because human beings are innately horrible. I think that the horrible tend to stand out more, so to be recorded more in history. I think there are probably a lot of amazing human beings who never made it to the history books. But as far as the ones that we do know of, man, that's such a long list of murderous, evil dictators and people squashing everybody else. It's like, it's a long one. Really, really.
And but we've kind of put these people into camps of good and evil. And we know that from modern day what we went to is a bit more, it's not as black and white as that, but over years of storytelling, that's how it becomes. You know, Hitler was an evil guy. You know, the Allied forces were the good guys. But when we crack away at that veneer, we start to see it wasn't so black and white.
Well, and also who's telling the stories, you know, because usually you get people who win a war tend to put their spin on who the good and bad guys are.
Yeah.
If it's a war, you don't get that option.
Yeah, because if the Japanese had bombed America in the way that we had done to them, it would have been one of the worst terrorist attacks ever.
Totally. And you do get, if you have the Japanese and the Germans win World War II, clearly history would look the history books would read very differently.
Yeah. Possibly in Japanese.
Definitely.
I have a question here from fans of the show. This one's from Laura Hope. And she asks, what's the most interesting podcast you haven't done yet? A topic you're saving for the future, or maybe deciding how to approach?
Sure. There are a couple that I really badly want to do. One is about Ikkyu Sojun, who was a Zen monk from the 1400s. He's absolutely hilarious. His priorities are drinking, sex, and Zen. He's a funny guy. Because it's such a different story from the usual, conqueror, or, there's always some fire. There's no violence in Ikkyu's story whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's just harder because there's no immediate obvious conflict there.
Yeah.
So I need to figure out how to frame it in a way that's compelling.
Is that
There's
unusual
also,
to not have someone that's not doing stuff like that? There's no sort of conflict. Is that unusual in stories that you find?
yeah, pretty much every single story I've touched so far, all the characters, in one way or another, are involved with violence.
Yeah.
I mean, even people who don't kill anybody, but like Jack Johnson, he was a professional boxer, okay? Or there's always something having to do with it. Tiki is just a mellow guy who likes to drink and have sex, and so it's a very different kind of take on it. And I badly want to do it. He's a cool character. Another one that fascinates me is the period of what in US they call the French and Indian War, which is kind of part of the 7 Years' War between England and France. That's a good one. That's a fascinating one, and it's I'm reading, especially in North America, is intriguing because you're looking at a place where there's nobody's ruling.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of people jockeying for position. There are a bunch of different English colonies who don't really like each other very much, but they like the French even less. And there's a bunch of stiff tribes who keep shifting alliance. That time period, that place looks extremely fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm. And is it a culture that wrote things down, so you wouldn't have particularly much in the way of documents? It would have to be word of mouth when it comes to that thing, would it be?
Yeah, I mean, you do have Native Americans. I mean, yeah, Native American you don't have a lot. You are going to have a lot of English sources and French sources giving you their perspective. And then there's some native stuff. So, but yeah, those ones are, that's a big one too, because it's hard to, I don't know where to cut it. Do I want to tell the whole story of the French and Indian War? That's long.
Yeah.
Do I want to just focus on some episodes or some people? Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know yet how to frame it.
Yeah. Okay. Another question is, what do you feel, how do you feel podcasting offers you more than traditional academia platforms do not? She feels there's an undercurrent in academia that manifests as an unwillingness and inability to communicate with public and or peers.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of academic stuff. It's really boring. It's just done in a way that it's, they write these papers that really nobody's going to read. They are designed for the 5 other people in their field. It's, to me, it's important for any kind of, anything that you're into. You need to be able to communicate it to your 90-year-old grandma and to your 5-year-old kid and to, if you're telling a good story, if you're telling something it's not even a story, anything. If it's interesting, if it's something valuable, if you're trying to communicate it, you should be able to communicate in a way that anyone can understand why it's important. Even if they don't understand all the nuance, anybody want to listen to more because you're like, okay, I'm getting there's something cool here, Mm-hmm. The problem is that that's usually the language of entertainment. Entertainment is there trying to hook you in and keep an audience that's not a captive audience where you have choices and you have to make it compelling for people to want to listen. Yeah. Whereas academics, people are used to having a captive audience there, so they can be as dry, as boring as they want, because what are they going to do? They have to sit in the class anyway. Yeah. So it's a very different way of communicating and not a very effective one, in my opinion.
If there was only some way to relay the information in terms of that's relatable, I mean, there has to be a middleman there somehow, and I think that's why podcasts are great for that sort of stuff. And
it's not that hard, because, I mean, when you look at history is it's Game of Thrones everywhere. There's so like Game of Thrones. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And, when I read books, most of the books I'm reading are monstrously boring about history. I do that because what I'm going to do is dig for gold there, find a little gold nugget in the mid of a bunch of mud, pull that out, and put a bunch of them, string them together so that the whole thing comes across more interesting.
Yeah.
But the typical history book, not fun to.
Do you think they're made to sort of confuse people and so it's only aimed at other academics? Or do you think that's just the language they use?
I think both. I mean, some of it's kind of like there's this snobbish, this is how we do things. If you don't understand it, it's your problem, rather than, no, you're just a bad communicator.
Yeah.
Some of it is, I don't think, is intentional. It's just that there aren't even many. First, it's harder to be a good communicator than a bad communicator.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just maybe there aren't that many models for how to do it in a way that's compelling. And if all you read is crap on top of crap on top of crap, when you start writing, that's all you know. That's how you know how. This is how we write. This is how we'll do it.
Yeah.
And so it perpetuates a bit of this
And I think
culture that's very poor in communication.
I think that's why, just to lead on from what I was saying before, that it's important that you and other people like Dan Carlin are doing these type of podcasts where you can take in all that information and then relay it in such a relatable way. And then it's popular because of that. People are listening because they understand it.
Right. That's the point, because when you think about it, all we're doing is just telling cool stories.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing else but telling cool stuff. I mean, there's a lot of information. Sure, there's a lot of research behind it. But then, anybody who wants to read can do that. The only thing that prevents many people from doing that is that they may not be that good at telling stories and keeping up a compelling narrative,
What would you say is your favorite episode that you've done so far?
One of my favorite topic, I think, is probably the Caravaggio series was fun. I very much enjoyed doing the Crazy Horse series. I very much I enjoy them all, really. I tend to like more the personal stories versus the more big picture kind of thing. I like the biographies a lot. Jack Johnson was fun. Theodore Roosevelt was fun. When we zero in on specific characters, I tend to enjoy it even more. But overall, I can't really think of episodes that I've not enjoyed working on.
The 47 Ronin one was one of my personal favorites.
Yeah,
and you could tell that you enjoyed reeling this information, and it came across so well, and it was brilliant. The 2 episodes were just fantastic.
Yeah, that one was a fun one. I enjoyed that one, and I enjoy also not getting stuck always with just Western history, but to be able to do something else. And so in this case, veering to Japanese history was fun. I enjoyed that for sure.
Was it quite alien to you, that side of it, doing Japanese history?
Yeah, because there's a lot that I don't know about it. So I was like, okay, I need to tread really carefully here because I'm understanding these specific stories. I'm not entirely sure about the context here, so I need to work on it a bit.
Yeah. And just another question here: how does the process of writing a book differ from making an episode of your podcast? Are they quite similar?
With book writing, you have to go a lot. It's harder because when I'm taking notes for a podcast, okay, I got the information, I got this, I got that, but then it's so much easier to then just get it done because you're not trying to kind of put every comma right because eventually it's spoken word, so some of it is going to work itself out in the narration. Whereas in this game, when you write books, is so much slower, so much more meticulous. So it's definitely harder to do.
Do you think with what you're doing, it's kind of antiquated to write books? Do you think podcasting for you is a better platform for what you're doing?
I think they are 2 different languages, and I think they can hopefully. I mean, I personally appreciate both.
Yeah.
And I hope that people can do that, where there's a way to actually not just simply replace books, because books have their own awesome things, but to just be in different ways to communicate.
Yeah, and that is, books are still has its place. I love reading. I gravitate more towards audible books. It's just when I'm doing something, it just goes in better, that information. But when you sit down with one, there's nothing better. That's your imagination as opposed to someone else's idea.
Absolutely. And I just, for sure.
Yeah. One thing I've been thinking about, do you think there's a a correlation between warriors and martial artists and seeking out knowledge? You know, this is something that always seems to be prevalent, you know, and to better yourself with your mind as well as just your body. It seems to be thematic throughout history.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the notion that the mind exists completely outside the body is like, well, I'm not that convinced of that. The way I see it, there's a feedback loop. You know, your body affects your mind affects your body.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no way to. So I tend to distrust ideas that are focused on either one.
Yeah.
That are either purely about the body for body's sake or purely about the mind as if it could live outside the body.
Mm-hmm.
Less than thrilled with that.
Yeah. And it is, you see people having a thirst for knowledge even when they're dedicating their body to something every single day. And that seems to be, I mean, it's kind of cheesy to say, but like the yin and yang of life. You know, you have to have those.
That's life. You know, life is rarely one thing or the other. It's usually a mix of things. The answer is, you know, when you're asked to choose between these or that, it's usually a trick question because it's like, no, it's both.
Yeah.
Maybe not equally, but rarely the opposites are as opposite as one would think. Yeah. There's usually a way to balance things out.
And you're, of course, not just an academic. You train martial arts yourself, don't you?
Yeah, that's actually why I was late today into our because we were training and we got home way later than expected.
Is it just BJJ you're doing, or is it still traditional martial arts?
Right now, it's doing BJJ and judo.
Okay. Is that something you've done before, judo, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, I've done it for a few years. Judo is harder. I find Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu way easier than judo. Judo is damn hard. Because it's like, if you do a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu movement like 80% right, probably doesn't work. If you do a judo move 80% right, you might as well not do it at all. It needs to be either it's on or it's not. There's no... So it's hard. I find it much more frustrating and slow in progress.
I think that shows that yin and yangness when it comes to judo and jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu comes from Brazil, where it can be a bit more chilled out, and judo obviously is from Japan, where it's very sort of strict and focused on what you're doing and repetition.
Well, and the thing too is that when you start standing up, it includes a whole other series of variables, and usually the game is a lot faster.
Yeah.
You move quicker, you have less time to think. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can always slow things down.
Yeah.
You can always kind of, okay, this is a little overwhelming, got a grip, got in a good position, apply weight, breathe. Okay, let's think about it. What do I want to do? You know, in judo, there's none of that. Yeah. It's go, 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 go from beginning to end.
Yeah, one of my friends who I train with, he was a Commonwealth judo champion, so he was like an elite judo guy.
Right.
And he almost went to the Olympics, but there's a lot of bureaucracy when it comes to the Olympics. And yeah, he's just an intense guy. You know, he's just has this innate super strength, and from all the reps he's done, it just seems like he's got this farmer strength, you know, but it comes down to just reps and reps and reps from a small child. Absolutely, for sure. Are you following the UFC? Are you going to be watching tonight with
Probably, yeah.
It's going to be a good show, though.
Yeah, it should be. The big I thought it was weird. The flyweight champion for women, she couldn't make weight and they canceled, and every time it happens, people are always like, they got scared, they walk. It's like, these are elite fighters who are going to lose money, who are going to, it's really bad for their careers when they can't step up. Do you really think that anybody who made it that far suddenly gets scared and doesn't step up? No, I mean, even if these are people who are used to getting scared and they step up anyway. So if there's a problem, it's usually because there really is a problem. You know, there's like some, and weight cutting is messed up, man. It's hard. It's lots of people, because you don't want to give up the advantage and go make the weight cut too easy, because
Yeah.
then you're fighting against somebody who's probably heavier than you by the fight time. And at the same time, the harder you go, the more you take the risk of not being able to pull it off correctly. Very difficult game.
I thought it was a bit of a strange situation with Dana White stripping her of the title.
Yeah.
You know, especially when she had just been to hospital as well. It was like, that's the last thing you want to hear when you're ill.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, it was clear that the UFC wanted Shevchenko to win anyway, and they wanted her to be the new champion, and she was probably going to win anyway. And so Dana White was like in a hurry. He's like, oh, come on, enough already. You know, you have had... and, you know, she hasn't defended the title in 9 months because she had a bunch of physical issues.
Yeah.
So I can understand... I understand more the stripping of the title than the making a big deal about it, like she did something wrong. She didn't do anything wrong.
No.
It's just bad luck.
No.
You know?
It's just a business as well when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you have a pick at all for Till and Tyrone?
That's a hard one, because they are all... My guess is that they are both probably play really conservative.
Yeah.
So it's going to probably boil down to, unless something major out of the blue happen, it's probably going to be a resort team decision.
Yeah.
So it could really go either way, because based on what they have done in the past, my guess is that nobody's going to take chances.
No.
So it's probably going to be a really boring fight.
Yeah.
That's my guess. It's going to be very calculated, very slow, and you know, anything can happen in one of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of seemed the same type of fight with Wonder Boy and Tyrone.
Yeah.
So possibly it could happen. I think with Till and Wonder Boy, they both kind of went a bit more conservatively again. So we might just see a repeat of this.
Yeah,
it's a weird division for that.
You know, maybe somebody land a huge punch right off the bat, and it's like, but unlike, you know, there's a good chances that this may last a while.
Yeah, all 5 rounds.
Yeah.
Do you think anyone's going to edge it, or is it just going to be?
Yeah, I really think that, you know, if they are going to play that way and something dramatic does not happen, then it's kind of a flip of a coin.
Yeah.
And obviously
we have the big fight coming at the end of the month with Conor and Khabib. Is that something you're going to be watching?
That's nuts. I'm going to hide behind the couch and just yeah, it's a tricky one, because Khabib is not a good striker. He leaves himself open.
Yeah.
But he's a monster wrestler, and wrestling is kind of Conor's kryptonite.
Yeah.
So, and Conor has no cardio. So, you know, round fights, he could, in a 3-round fight, maybe.
Yeah.
In a 5-round fight, it's classic Conor fight. You know, he has 2 rounds to make it happen.
Yeah.
He either catch him coming in and knocks him out in spectacular fashion that looks very dominating, or he gets taken down and pounded into oblivion, whether quickly or over 5 rounds. But either way, just dominate. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a very even fight. This is going to be a very dominant performance on the part. Could be either guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be exciting, but at the same time, we're going to see one guy dominate. It's just it's been so strange. We haven't seen any media between the two. That's kind of disappointing, you know.
Right.
I don't know where that stems from.
Yeah.
And so usually for new people that have been on the show, I end with some questions, obviously. Favorite piece of music you've listened to recently or of all time?
Music, I mean, hard to pick one, but let's just, for the sake of playing, let's just say hard to top Hendrix. Hendrix is just a god.
Yeah, man. Some of the Woodstock stuff, you know, just every time I see that, him playing there, it's just, it's like he was possessed, you know.
Yeah.
And a favorite movie of all time, or something you have seen recently?
Some of my all-time favorites. So we got the 1982 version of Conan the Barbarian, of course. I always love The Princess Bride. Remember The Princess Bride?
Do you know what? I only just saw this for the first time.
Did you?
Last year, my girlfriend, she loves this movie. She's Canadian, so like she grew up watching it all the time.
Awesome.
And I was like, you know, when you see a movie later on in life that you didn't see when you were younger, and it just you have no connection to it. There's no. But with this, I thought it was hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's like it's written so well. Not one wasted line.
Yeah.
Every line, I was like, oh, this is perfect, you know? So, yeah, Princess Bride is awesome. Lord of the Rings, I really, really love all the Lord of the Rings movies. I recently rewatched Kill Bill, Tarantino. That was so good. Better than I remember it even.
I watched, last night I watched Triple X with Vin Diesel. I've not seen that, and it's so cheesy, but it is brilliant.
Yeah, I have nothing against cheesy.
And Vin Diesel's full of that as well. So,
right.
Your favorite book?
I would say there are probably three things that I consider extremely important. So there was the Tao Te Ching for philosophical purposes.
Mm-hmm.
There's also for philosophical purposes, probably Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche. And then there's for fun and for more than fun, but also a little more lighthearted and enjoyable. In terms of fiction, I like this author, Tom Robbins, who wrote this series of books from Still Life with Woodpecker, Jitterbug Perfume. He's hilarious. He's just so good with words and so funny and so deep at the same time. I don't read that much fiction because to me, like, whereas a book for other purposes is, okay, I'm getting some knowledge, even if it's not a fun book to read, it's useful to me. Fiction is just about, I'm either enjoying it or I'm not. And a lot of fiction is not that enjoyable. So Tom Robbins, Tom Robbins book, this I'm going to enjoy big time.
I'm quite similar to you with that. I struggle to read a lot of fiction. You know, I think non-fiction to me is just, there's so much in the world that's more fulfilling than a lot of fiction. Obviously, science fiction I love, but just anything that's sort of contemporary, it doesn't really do much for me. One of my favorite all-time books is The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. It's just an amazing book. It took me 4 times to read it because it's so heavy for me anyway. You know,
a lot there for sure. I think, like, to me, good fiction. Like, I don't read average fiction. I either read amazing fiction where I'm like, my God, this book was amazing, or I don't bother. Yeah. It's like, I don't read a fiction book kind of like, it's okay. No, if it's okay, I don't want to read it. It needs to be just, I need to be like, oh my God, I can't wait to get back into it. You know, a writer that I like a lot, even though I don't necessarily like the topics per se, Don Winslow. Okay. He writes a lot of like this. He wrote a lot about the drug war, US, Mexico and stuff. I don't particularly care for the topics, but his writing style is amazing.
Have you read the Book of Leaves?
No, I have not.
Oh man, this is one of the first times I read this, and it's just the writing style. It's one of these things where it's completely unique. You know, it's just you're in this house and there's lots of trippy things going on, and then it translates across the pages, and it is one I definitely recommend. You know, you just feel so tripped out just reading this book. And to bring it to the last one is your favorite quote.
Check this one out. E.Q. Sojun, the guy we're talking about, there's a line of his that says, "Throw me into hell, and I'll find a way to enjoy it." And I love it because, you know, he's not denying that there's bad shit out there. There's no denying that, there's nothing I can do about it sometimes. You know, it's like, and he's not trying to put a spin like, no, hell is not really hell. It's actually a good learning experience. No, it sucks. It just flat out sucks.
Sounds like something a Spartan said.
Having said that, now that we know that it sucks, I still need to play my cards the best way I can. So I'm going to find a way to enjoy it. You know, it's there's a certain laughing defiance there that I enjoy.
Yeah, totally. And that's something that you have to take in life as well. Could I make a show suggestion? You probably get a lot of these actually. Maybe something based in Scotland. You know, William Wallace. Notoriously,
That's a good.
there's a lot of shit out there that's not particularly true. You know, bet the Scottish connection there.
Yeah. Well, if you have good sources that you like on the topic, if you want to shoot me an email, I would love to check it out because
I don't think there is many.
Perfect. That's I can do an episode out of it without having to go crazy studying for 6 months. So I'll check it out. So if you do think this stuff is more reliable than others and so on, I would love to check it out.
Cool, man. I'll do that. And I have one last question. My girlfriend, she loves the Italian language, and she asked for you to say in Italian, "My artichoke is not working."
My artichoke is not working?
Yes.
Let me think. I would imagine it would be translated as "Il mio cavolfiore non funziona."
That's it.
That would be
she'll
the
be
translation.
happy that you said that.
I am pleased.
Anyway, man, thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll continue to listen to your podcast. Is there anybody you want to say thanks to, sponsors or anything like that?
All good.